So this is one of the vacuum lines we're going to be using for the gas lab experiment. This is the one we'll be handling butane on. I'm doing this demonstration of how to start up and shut down a vacuum line and how to use it on this one because it's not in the hood, so it's a little easier to see. So both of the vacuum lines we're going to be using are like this. They're glass. They're laid out similarly, but because of the space, things are in slightly different places. But the gas paths basically end up being the same idea. So let me first just point out some pieces of the vacuum line, and then we'll go through starting it up. So this tube over here goes to a mechanical pump down under the counter. There's a valve back here which controls whether the pump pumps on this diffusion pump. If that's open, it pumps on the diffusion pump. And the valve here controls whether it pumps towards the trap here. I will discuss those in more detail. There's a valve here as well, so the two valves on either side of the diffusion pump can be used to isolate it. You can pump around it with a mechanical pump. This is a vent valve, which just lets you put in air into the trap and this region here without exposing the manifold, the part that we work with, to air. We try to never bring this part up to atmosphere. So, in addition to the pumps, we have two pressure gauges on this, so I'm going to plug them in one at a time here and talk about them. So the one that should be lighting up now is the thermocouple gauge. So if you follow this black cord, you see that there's the thermocouple sensor. You should have read about those. This sensor here is the barocell. So that's the absolute pressure sensor that we're actually going to use to measure our pressures. This is the controller. We'll plug it in and it will light up and give us some idea of what the pressure of the vacuum line is without starting it up. So this is without having done anything. The vacuum line's been sitting. So this valve is closed. This section is at about 15 to 16 torr. If we open this valve, we can see what the pressure in the main part of the vacuum line is, and that's pretty high. It's about 224 torr. Not surprising because this had some stuff in it before that was potentially stuck to the glass and it's had time to come off. So all of these valves are closed. This is a thermometer. You're going to use that with this device right over here just to read the temperature inside the vacuum line. Right now it says it's 21.8 degrees Celsius. Okay, so how do you start up a vacuum line? Well, the first thing you do is you go and make sure that all of the valves are closed. How do you tell if a valve is closed? Well, you tell because the O-ring seal is compressed enough that it looks wet. I'm going to try to zoom in on one of those so that you can see that. So you're looking at this O-ring here, and it makes sort of wet. You don't actually want it to be super compressed, but it should look like it's sealed all the way around. So now I'm going to back off so we can see the whole line again. Okay, so there's the whole vacuum line. Let's back up just a little farther. There we go. Okay. So, if everything's closed, things look like they're in good shape. This valve right now is open. So before we do anything, we're going to close the vent valve. And I'm just going to thread this down until the O-ring at the very end here looks wet. I'm not cranking it hard, just have to make sure the seal goes all the way around. And these are all closed. So now I can start pumping. So you can't see it, but underneath here there's a switch for the mechanical pump. I'm just going to turn it on. So you can hear it pumping. It's making a little bit of noise, but what you'll see when I open the valve to here, which wasn't atmospheric, where you'll hear, right, the pump got noisier. It'll get quieter again as it pumps down. When you open the valves, there's some threads here. You can't back the second O-ring, the top O-ring in this particular case, but the outermost one, up past the beginning of the threads. Otherwise, you'll get a leak. So now we've pumped out this part. Let's see what happens if we open this valve, which if you follow things here, it goes through here, out here, and that'll give us access to the manifold. You can hear it making noise and then getting quieter. You probably cannot read easily on the video, but the pressure gauge now reads about 0.2 torr. It's almost down to 0. It'll take it a little while. If I open the valve to the thermocouple gauge, it too will go down. And we use that to tell that we're at really low pressures, because the paracel's only good to about 0.1 torr. The thermocouple gauge reads in millitorr, so that's 0.06 torr right now, and going down. So things look pretty good. The line is pumping out. So that's the first step. The next thing we need to do is start up the diffusion pump. And different diffusion pumps work differently. This one is air-cooled, so it has a fan. I'll start by plugging the fan in and making sure it starts up. That's what this is, and I can see that it's spinning, so it's got air blowing over it. So we're almost ready to start it up. But before we do that, we need to make sure that it's actually pumped out too. So we'll close the valve here, just in case it's not pumped out. And just open the valve on the back side of it and listen to the pump. It didn't change noise, which suggests the diffusion pump is under vacuum, which means it was shut down properly and doesn't have any leaks. So now we can start it up, and there is a power supply over there and an on switch here. Now, it takes 20 minutes or so for a diffusion pump to start up. So I'm just going to leave this pumping on it, shut down the video, and we'll come back and continue with setting up the vacuum line after the diffusion pump is going.